Okay, so this is hopefully going to be the redo of the preseason top 25 stream video. I'm going to try to keep this brief. I'm going to try to motor through this as fast as I can because some of the suspense and innate interest in this is gone since we announced it yesterday after me bungling the online stream. So the idea here is that I'll just run through it, kind of talk about the teams that Lewis, Donnie, Michael Thomas of Texas A&M, and then Joey kind of included, gave feedback on. That way we can kind of roll into the season. I won't do the Devi order since that was announced too, but we'll get right into this. Up at 25, we got Daniel Miller of the ACC with the Clemson Tigers at number 25. Daniel was able to sneak in with 8 votes. He had 3 top 10, 1 top 5. He's projected to be this decent competing team at over 1,500 points, getting close to 1,600. We ran these projections with using Matt Martin's, who's Oregon's projections tool that we kind of looked at and shared in chat. With those in mind, he kind of projects out to be a 10-win, 7-win team in the ACC Atlantic. Kind of has a decent schedule, plays some tough teams, Texas A&M, South Carolina, UConn, Duke. But on the back half of the schedule, he really plays maybe 2 tough teams with NC State and UCF. Team-wise, he probably looked better earlier in the year when he had Cam Akers, but he still has Kyler Murray. He's got Gus Edwards. Darrell Henderson will provide a valuable punch. Jonathan Taylor is his best player, I would probably imagine, out of his skill positions. He does have Justin Jefferson, Russell Gage, Darnell Mooney, Mecole Hardman, KJ Hamler is this kind of perfect complement third and fourth wide receiver option in this format. So we'll see what happens with him. Would be interesting to see what happens with Daniel if he is competing for the division, if he might unredshirt Chase later on in the year, if he's a decent option for him. So that's Daniel at 25. Shift gears to 24th ranked team, that is Indiana out of the Big Ten East. Indiana is coached by Brent Strawhacker. Brent is, like I said, out of the Big Ten East. He same kind of voting profile from the preseason top 25, 8 votes in the top 25, 3 in the 10, 1 in the 5. Interesting to see where that team falls. Projection-wise, the model did not like him nearly as much, where he's just north of 1,500 points, which is kind of in this 30 to 40 team ranking range. Project him out to not even be a bowl eligible team at 6 and 7, and then the conference he'll be below sub 500. And I think part of that projection is he does have a few teams that he's got to fight through in his conference schedule. He's got to play Iowa, Purdue, Michigan, Penn State, who are all considered to be pretty tough outs this season. His non-conference doesn't get much easier when he's got Oklahoma State, South Carolina up as well. Roster-wise, he is pretty much healthy. He's got maybe a few guys that he's got to get on IR still with N'Keal Harry and Lynn Bowden, but he's got Sam Darnold as his only real QB, unless he is competing in the second half of the season or maybe at the bye week mark. He's week 13 pushing Zach Wilson into the fold, but I would imagine you kind of roll with Darnold for most of the season and see what you can get and where you fall. He's got Montgomery, Jonathan Taylor, wide receivers Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jacoby Myers, Mooney, Cortland Sutton. So a much better wide receiving group than previous team. We'll just see how far Sam Darnold can kind of take this team, because as I mentioned in the strategy podcast, and we did talk about yesterday on the stream, was that this idea that really good quarterbacks are pretty much and an immense value in this format. Really productive, high value, high scoring quarterbacks are hard to come by, and when they do, you want to make sure usually you're a good competing team if you put together a strong roster. So that's Indiana. They're 24. Up next is Oklahoma State. This is out of the Big 12 South, and they are coached by, I believe his name is Matt. Yep, Matt Snyder. So Oklahoma State, they got a few more votes than the previous two teams with 10 in the top 25, but a limited ceiling in terms of getting entries into the top 10. He's just north of 1,515 points, expected to have a pretty competitive record, over 11 wins and 7 in the conference play. Team-wise, he plays a few teams that we mentioned already, and in the previous team was Indiana week 2, South Carolina week 1. Does have a lighter cross-conference schedule with West Virginia and Kansas State. It does play Oklahoma, Houston, Baylor in the back half of his schedule, so it'll be interesting to see how well he does against those teams. Rosters-wise, he has probably one of the better quarterbacks in the format this year with Lamar Jackson. Also has Baker Mayfield for a backup. Running backs, he's pretty much got two and a half solid good options with Josh Jacobs, James Robinson. Also has Nyheim Hines, who's I think could be a sneaky option for a lot of teams, especially as a bye week replacement. Wide receivers, he's got Gabriel Davis, Mecole Hardman as good options as backups. Terry McLaurin as kind of the centerpiece with Cortland Sutton as a backup. This team is a little interesting where he was able to grab 4 quarterbacks, so he is also set up for quarterback in the future where he's going to redshirt Mac Jones and Trey Lance and keep their eligibility. So this team will be interesting to see where they go. I think maybe some of their schedule might keep them back, but he could be competing for Big 12 South division title this year for sure. So that's 23. Number 22 is our Jake Banana Man. Our good old drunkard Jake, who is apparently at a wedding last night and wasn't able to join us on stream. But Jake's been in this format before. This is probably the best team he's ever constructed in this format, so kudos to him for that. But voting-wise, just one more in the top 25 than Matt in Oklahoma State. He's gotten 2 in the top 10, 1 in the top 5, and 1 in the top. And one time as one of those votes is the top 1. Mind you, those top 5 and top 1 votes were the same, and they were both from him. So they were self-servicing. He's projected to be around the same mark as Oklahoma State, have a very similar record. I think he is the highest-ranked ACC Atlantic team, so he's one of the favorites to win that division this year. Schedule-wise, has kind of a pseudo-light non-conference schedule. Plays Vandy, who could be good. Oregon, who's, I think, one of the better teams outside the top 25. Colorado State's a good team. But once you get into the conference play, I think he really only has 2 good matchups. Maybe Georgia Tech puts up a fight. Clemson's ranked. They'll be good. UCF could be a good team. Roster-wise, he's got Jalen Hurts, who could be an underrated player in this format as a starting quarterback. I imagine Daniel Jones gets in as a spot fill or injury replacement over the season. He's got James Robinson, Josh Jacobs as his primary running backs, but has good options with Shoney Michel and Devin Singletary as kind of these backup running back 3 options. Wide receivers, he's got Chark, Gallup, Terry McLaurin, Henry Ruggs, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Yeager, and Marquez Callaway is kind of this good 6-7 options he can play in those spaces. His team would look a lot better, though, if it did have Dobbins, and I think we'll notice a kind of a trend that voting-wise, some of these teams maybe don't actually fulfill some of these projections because Dobbins or Cam Akers or I don't think any Etienne's made it, but those guys are being out is definitely a big detractor. So that is 22. Congrats to Jake, but don't let it go to your head. Number 21, we stay in the ACC. We just kind of skip over to the other division here with UConn. UConn's coached by Azish, I think is his name. New to the format, but put together a pretty good squad over in the ACC Coastal. First team over 1,600 points projected in this form so far in this list. He has 13 votes in the top 25, none higher than that, none in the top 10 or 5. So he is kind of probably where he needs to be ranked in the 20s on average, and he's projected to get north of 10 wins. Schedule-wise, he plays Clemson, Virginia Tech, Duke are his big 3 games that he plays this season. The rest of the schedule is kind of this middling so he'll either need to win those games or win his division to really have a shot, maybe a really outside shot at an at-large bid this playoffs this year. Roster-wise, he's got Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. He needs to get Zach Wilson on his taxi before the deadline. Running backs Gaskins, David Montgomery, Miles Sanders as a solid 3 options at running back. Wide receivers, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, Jacoby Myers, Devonta Smith, and that's pretty much it. Now Russell Gage too, so nothing flashy really out of the wide receiver spot besides maybe Deontay Johnson and Terry McLaurin, but they're a step or 2 below like CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson type guys. So it's a good team. I think maybe it's lacking really heavy hitters, but maybe Josh Allen carries them a bit farther than we expect. So that's UConn at 21. Number 20 is Ricky in Notre Dame. Ricky's been in this format before. He is, again, kind of like Jake. I think this is probably his best team he's ever put together in this format. He's got kind of a mix of voting, 14 in the top 25, 3 in the top 10, 1 in the top 5. Projects even under 1,550 points. His win-loss, I think, is pretty consistent with what we would think based on his schedule, where he plays teams like Penn State, Michigan, Purdue, Iowa. It's 4 really tough goes that I don't know if he's got the horses to beat all those teams, but we'll see. Arkansas is another good team that he'll have to play. So we'll see what happens with him. Again, he did have Dobbins on his team, so he doesn't look nearly as strong as he did prior to that injury. Quarterbacks, he's got Murray, Jalen Hurts. So Murray's a great option at 1. Hurts is a great backup for Murray. Chase Edmonds, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Devin Singletary kind of hold down the running back room for him. But he does have better wide receivers than like a team like we just saw with UConn, where he's got Metcalf, Mooney, Gabriel Davis, Jalen Reagor, Hunter Renfrow, Laviska Shenault. So he's got a good team. We'll see what happens with his schedule. I think some of his conference opponents are much harder than some of the teams he saw previously. So number 20 is Ricky. On to number 19 is Lewis's nemesis. We spent a lot of time talking about why Lewis is scared of Dalton, especially out of the MAC. He is terrified of him when he has to play Week 13. I don't know if Lewis has got the horses to do it, but Toledo is ranked at 19th in the preseason polls. They have 12 votes in the top 25, 3 in the top 10, 1 in the top 5, and did get a vote from one of his buddies and for the top spot. So he's north of 1,500 points, which is pretty good for a top-end minor league team or minor conference team this season. Projected to be the second best team in the MAC this season. I think third best in the conference. He's got not that tough of a schedule. They just play Utah, Buffalo as his primary tough games this season. So with a roster of Sam Darnold, Tua Tagovailoa, they got a late bye week, so he'll pretty much have a quarterback for most of the season to play. Running back wise, he's got Chubb, Chase Edmonds, Najee, who I expect he'll play this start the season. Wide receivers, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Debo are kind of there. So not much depth beyond those things, and that's kind of the part to play when you're a minor. You maybe have more really good viable starters where you have like 6, but then the depth kind of drops off really quick because it all gets spread out through 20 teams instead of 16. So we'll see what happens with the minor league conferences, if they can sneak anyone in an at-large bid this season. I don't think it'll happen this first season, but if Dalton can continue building on his success, maybe he can get there in a year or 2. I don't know how viable of an option that is, but something I think he would try to strive for. So Dalton, number 19. Next up is Nevada, who is number 18. Nevada is another minor league conference team, and they are in the Mountain West, the only Mountain West team that got ranked in the top 25 so far this season. He's got 11 votes in the top 25. He's actually over 1,600 points, almost 1,650. He's projected to be the Mountain West division winner and potentially and definitely is representative in the projections for the conference championship. Schedule-wise, really plays maybe 2-3 tough opponents. Virginia Tech definitely is going to be a tough out. Hawaii maybe if they have a healthy team, and then probably Fresno State are his 3 toughest opponents this season. On his team, he's got Lamar Jackson as really his only viable quarterback. Running backs, he's got Barkley, Josh Jacobs as his 2 running backs. He would be better maybe if he had Jeffrey Wilson still, but he needs to get him on IR for sure. Wide receivers, he's got Michael Gallup, DK Metcalf, Devonta Smith, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson. So a little more depth at that position than, let's say, Dalton, but not sure he's got nearly like the high-end wide receivers that Dalton had. I think Dalton had maybe 1 or 2 more. But I think this team is probably looking like the one to beat out of the Mountain West for sure. So that's 18. 17, we're kicking back to the MAC for one more. This is actually the final minor conference team on the top 25. And it's Buffalo. Buffalo coached by Adam. He has got not a full roster. I think he said in chat he wasn't nearly as interested in rostering some of those scrubs, and it kind of shows with how little he's got beyond these 19 players. So he's got Josh Allen, Daniel Jones at quarterback, so he actually has a backup for his quarterback. Running backs, he's got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Antonio Gibson, James Robinson, so he's got 3 really good options. Wide receivers, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, CeeDee Lamb, Jacoby Myers. That's 4, and Ruggs. That's 4 to 5 really good options to have for a minor league team. So this is definitely one I think is going to be suited better to win the conference, I would think, more so than like Nevada or Toledo. He's got a few tough games this season. UCLA, Oklahoma will be tough goes. He does have to play Toledo. So that's about 3 to 4 games that he has that are going to be tough opponents. Hopefully his team can stay healthy for it, because I think he could have a real shot at winning his conference this season. With that, we move just down from New York to Pennsylvania, and we stop at Penn State, who is ranked at 16. 16th ranked Penn State is coached by Mark Riegel. Mark's played in this format before, and some of his strategies kind of hold true where he goes for a lot of top-end talent. And maybe doesn't have nearly as much depth, but the team that he does construct is pretty going to wallop you with the guys he does get. So 14 votes in the top 25, just shy of 1,600 points projected. Has a pretty decent schedule with UCLA, Notre Dame, Michigan, Indiana as all tough outs. Team-wise, he's got Herbert, David Montgomery, James Robinson, Miles Sanders. Also has for wide receivers Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz. So he's got probably 3 decent running backs, a really good wide quarterback, 2 really good wide receivers, and some good depth behind him to kind of fill out the rest of his starting lineup. But beyond that, it's a little suspect, and they're all pretty much juniors and sophomores on this team. A few seniors, but he's a bit more on the upperclassman end, which I think gave him the ability to get a player like James Robinson in the auction where he wasn't getting priced as much. So Mark comes at 16th, has a real shot at being a kind of a terror in the Big Ten East. Kick further south, and we go down to Memphis in the SEC West, who is ranked at 15th. This is coached by Matt Thompson. He is a pro at kind of putting these teams together. I think he's probably in 2 other leagues like this, NCFF and NFLU I think he's in. So he's got experience with the format, understands where he's got to put his time and effort in. Voting-wise, kind of got mixed bag in terms of where he fell. Half of it was in the top 20 or 15, 10 to 25 range, and then the other half was in the 10 and up range. So expected to get over 1,600 points. Right now, I don't know how viable these records are. I think my calculation kind of went off because he's got a pretty tough schedule with Houston, Vanderbilt, LSU, Texas A&M, Auburn. All his really tough goes through the season. Roster-wise, he's got Herbert, Daniel Jones as his quarterbacks, Chase Edmonds, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery as his running backs. He's got wide receivers, Russell Gage, Calvin Ridley, Henry Ruggs, Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews. I think he's only got 20-some players, so he didn't even fill out his roster either, which is unfortunate. But, yeah, I think this team will be interesting. He's doing this DFS. I don't think it was planned per se, but he's got a very Atlanta Falcons heavy wide receiver group. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out for him. Could be boom, could be bust. And some of those conference divisional opponents like A&M, Auburn, LSU, if he loses those weeks, that could be a season right there. So Matt at 15. Up at 14 now, we're up to the Big 12 with Iowa State. Jake here is new to the format, and upon announcing the rankings yesterday, doesn't feel that his ranking warrants this, but nonetheless, everyone voted. 14 people voted him in the top 25, 7 in the top 10. He's supposed to get projected close to 1,650 points, have an unblemished record. He's the only Big 12 North team on the top 25, and I think his division is actually kind of light. Scheduling wise, he's got maybe 3 games that are going to be tough. He's got week 2 against Iowa, that could be a tough go. Week 6 against Oklahoma, and then probably week 11 against Marshall might be the division game. So we'll see how that shakes out. Roster wise, he's got Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, and then running backs, Chase Edmonds, Miles Sanders. He looks like he's going to play Trey Sermon from the go. Chase Claypool, Michael Gallup, Jalen Reagor, Calvin Ridley, Cortland Sutton, Kyle Pitts. That's six to 7 good wide receivers. Running backs could be a bit of an iffy card with Chase Edmonds and Miles Sanders as being your 2 when you're playing against maybe Chubbs and Saquon Barkley type players, or Jonathan Taylor type players. So that'll be interesting to see. Maybe he gets more carried by Josh Allen this season if he is able to replicate that 400-point season. We'll see. So top Big 12 team in the North right here. We'll see what happens with them. But that's number 14. Number 13, we're going to go to the Big 10 East again, into Michigan. This is Chance Patrick's team. Chance is our lovable curmudgeon of the Alcohol Snobs group. He is our Grumpy Gus, lovable Grumpy Gus. But Chance doesn't feel like he put together nearly as strong of a team as what was voted, but he got 16 submissions for the top 25, so people feel differently. He's projected around 1,550 points, but he does have a pretty tough schedule, so we'll see how well he does schedule-wise, where he plays teams like Oklahoma, Purdue, Notre Dame, Penn State, Indiana, in this gauntlet of week 4 to week 9. He's playing 4 out of 5 really good teams, and we'll see how the strength of his team holds up against them. He is one of the only teams, I think, in the Power 5 conferences that actually scheduled all 3 of his non-conference games against, not all 3. He's got 3, though, against minor conference opponents. So we'll see how that stacks up in terms of strategy. If he's got an outside shot at at-large bid, that could hold him back in the ranking formula. Team-wise, he did have J.K. Dobbins on here, so this might be one of the reasons why he doesn't feel like it holds the merit of this ranking given that news. But Michigan's got Herbert. Locke is not nearly much of a backup this year because Teddy the God Bridgewater stepped into the starting role in Denver and won't be giving it away this season. Running back wise, he's got Darrell Henderson and Zach Moss. Not a sexy running back room, but maybe has 3-4 backup RB2s in there that might be able to give him enough points week to week. Wide receivers, though, he's got Ayuk, Claypool, Gage, Gallup, Renfro, Ridley, Debo, MVS, Gesicki, all those guys. That's probably like 7 deep in the running wide receiver area, so that might be where he plays maybe 2 of the running backs and plays more wide receivers compared to other teams that might play 3. So that's Chance. He's at 13. Number 12, we got to, I think is our first Pac-12 team? I think our first Pac-12 team, and that is UCLA. UCLA out of the Pac-12 South, coached by Kevin Gilman. Kevin is familiar with this format, has played in a few of them. He's got quite a few high confidence in his team with 16 votes in the top 25, 7 in the top 10, even 5 in the top 5. So people that feel like he's a top 10 team think he's pretty high up in the top 10 as well. And yeah, so sorry, I had to change the music. UCLA was team-wise has got Lamar, Baker Mayfield. Baker's a pretty good backup to have in this format given last season. Running backs, it's Saquon and Jonathan Taylor. I don't think he's got any. Nope, doesn't look like he's got any guys that he might see off the taxi squad that could help that running back room. So it's essentially 2 guys that he's got and nothing else. See how that holds. Maybe Sony Michel plays a role to fill every couple weeks, but any major injuries to those groups really is going to tank his season. He's got T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, Dallas Goedert, TJ Hawkinson. A very tight end heavy wide receiver room. We'll see how that strategy holds out. I think it'll be perfect wide receivers 3 and 4 to play players like Dallas Goedert or TJ Hawkinson week in and week out, and play with T. Higgins, Metcalf, Cortland Sutton for most of your core. Schedule-wise, he's got a pretty tough schedule, so we'll see how well he can hold, but he could be a definite at-large opponent if he's able to pull out some of these wins. Plays Buffalo, who's a top 25 team. Penn State, who's a top 25 team. He plays Stanford. Oregon's a good team. Colorado State, Utah is a good team. That's 5 really tough opponents, 5-6 tough opponents that he's got to play and get through in his own division. So UCLA, number 12. Congrats to Kevin. Up at 11, we go back to the death knell of the SEC in the West, where Auburn and Randy are ranked at 11. Randy's familiar with the format. He's always someone that wants to put together the most competitive team he possibly can any season ever. He doesn't like sitting back, which is perfect for this format because you don't get any points for tanking or giving up or anything like that. So I always commend Randy for always trying to improve his team to be competitive for that season. Quarterbacks, he's got Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Saquon Barkley, James Robinson. Wide receivers, though, he's got A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, DJ Chark, Jacoby Myers, MVS, Mark Andrews. That's a pretty good group. Running backs could be a little light, just like Kevin's team, but he does have Nyheim Hines and Justice Hill, who could maybe end up being that RB3 on bye weeks or injuries or something like that. Schedule-wise, he's kind of got a mammoth of a schedule. Virginia Tech, Duke, South Carolina, Kentucky are really tough goes. Then and he's got his own division opponents still too, with teams like Texas A&M, LSU, Memphis. Those are all tough goes for the entire season. So he's got 1, 2, 3. He's probably got seven tough games this year. But he's projected to be pretty well. I think Lewis had him as his second ranked team for the season. So this is going to be a good squad. We'll see how well they can hold up, how competitive they can be. But Auburn, number 10. Auburn's number 11. LSU, same division, number 10. Coached by our lovable Italian Luigi. Luigi plays in a lot of leagues. I think he said yesterday on stream he's up to 48 leagues. Plays in a bunch with Lewis. He is got a lot of votes for top 25. I think out of the 24 votes, he's got 18 in the top 25, 8 in the top 10, 6 of those are in the top 5, 2 even top 1 votes, but some of them were, I don't know, based on like the merit and strength of his team, but maybe more so because of the team name or who he is as a coach, so take it with a grain of salt, but does have a pretty good squad, has projected to get to over 1,600 points, is missing a huge piece of his team in Irv Smith this season, so maybe we'll temper some of those expectations. But quarterback room, Josh Allen is in there. He does have Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence does have the same bye as him, and he currently has him on the taxi down here. So not much of a value in terms of playing as a bye week fill-in, which is unfortunate, but if Josh Allen does go down, LSU does have the option of playing Trevor Lawrence or something. Running backs has Barkley, Chubb, Gus Edwards, Damian Harris, Darrell Henderson. Boston Scott is a pretty good option. Ronald Jones is a great backup. About 5 good playable running backs. Wide receivers, Marcus Callaway, Chase Claypool, Alan Lazard, Jacoby Myers, Deebo Samuel, Cortland Sutton. So nothing really sexy because, as I mentioned, Irv Smith is going to be missing. But does have some guys that he could play in a given week that can get him some points. And maybe the running back room of Barkley and Chubb are going to carry him with, Edwards or Darrell Henderson as the third option out of that team. Schedule-wise, he plays Fresno State, Stanford, 2 tough non-conference opponents, plays Memphis, and then to finish up the season, he's got 2 tough games that he's going to have to get through to win, and that is Auburn and Texas A&M. So we'll see what Luigi can do. Number 9, we're going to kick gears over to the ACC again and get to Duke. Duke is coached by Dylan Haggins, and Dylan has played in, I think, this format before. Friend of Jake Banana Man, so if you don't know him, he's not very active in chat, but he is someone who knows what he's doing at least. Team-wise, he put together a squad that's projected to get over 1,600 points. He's got Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, Chase Edmonds, Nyheim Hines, Miles Sanders. So one pretty good option of Barkley, and then Miles Sanders will be a pretty good running back too. Chase Edmonds, Nyheim Hines will be a backup. We'll see if Michael Carter can provide anything for him this season. Wide receivers, though, he's got DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Dallas Goedert, Pitts as pretty much his wide receivers. He's got about four of them that are good. He's got a few rookies that it looks like he might play. I don't know if he wants to put them out there at the beginning because I don't know how many points he'll get, but he might want to think about taxi squatting them, and that might be more viable. But Duke, schedule-wise, plays Auburn. That's a tough go. Got Clemson, who's another top 25 team. UConn's another tough opponent. Virginia Tech will be tough, and Georgia Tech might be a bit of a go. So he's got 4 or 5 teams that he's got that'll be tough goes for this season. We'll see how well he can hold up against them. Week 8 against UConn might be tough without Lamar, though. So that's Duke at number 9. Number 8 is Baylor. Baylor is coached by Hector. Hector, I think, is pretty new to this format and was a guy who focused a lot more on upperclassmen in the auction. He got a lot of votes in the top 25, though, so I think a lot of people feel that his team is very competitive for this year. He's got 17 in the top 25, 8 in the top 10. It's projected to be a 1,650-point team. Is in the Big 12 South, so he's got a few teams he's got to get through that we've already seen. Has a schedule where he's got to play Stanford, Marshall, Oklahoma State is a top 25 team, and Houston is going to be a tough go. Quarterbacks on this roster, he's got Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley at running back, Nick Chubb at running back, DeAndre Swift. So that's pretty good 3 to have for the start of the season. Wide receivers, though, we'll see how this holds up. He's got Calvin Ridley, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, He also's got KJ Hamler, Russell Gage. He's got Jalen Waddle. It looks like he might start him. I don't know how well of a strategy that'll be, but we'll see what happens with them. Hector at number 8. Number 7 is, I think, our top SEC team, Texas A&M, coached by Michael Thomas. Michael's played with us in a few leagues. He's buddies with Daniel out of Clemson. We did have him on the stream yesterday, so he was commenting a little bit on his squad. Does have quite a few votes, 19 out of the 24 votes in the top 25. He's got 10 in the top 10. Supposed to be north of 1,600 points. Schedule-wise, plays Clemson, as we've mentioned. Has a few pretty middling teams until he gets to the back half of his schedule, where he plays Auburn, plays Memphis, plays LSU, those same teams that we mentioned in this division that are going to be fighting for that division title. Team-wise, he's got only Kyler Murray, which is going to be, I think he'll be okay. If Kyler stays healthy, he'll be fine, because I think Mississippi State will be a pretty easy team week 12 when Kyler's bye is. Running backs got Chubb, Zach Moss, Tony Pollard. So I think a lot of the votes were projecting that he plays Najee down here, but he's going to start the season with Najee, and we talked about this with Michael quite a bit, the thought process behind why he's going to stick with him. And thought is, I have kind of a lighter first half of the schedule, so I'm going to play the field, see if I can get through with this team, because all of his chances are really held on the back half of his schedule and what's going to happen when he plays Auburn, Memphis, and LSU. And necessarily burning that red shirt now doesn't make too much sense. So I think he's going to take a slow burn in terms of understanding where his team falls, and then maybe Najee comes off the taxi squad week 8 if he's got a real shot at the conference or division or something like that. So yeah, that'll be an interesting play. I think wide receivers, he might be nothing really too. He's got Deontay Johnson, T. Higgins, Michael Gallup, Brandon Ayuk, Daryl Mooney. That's like 4 or 5 really good guys to have, and the depth behind it is going to give you some points on a week in, week out basis. So I think there's a lot of quality to there. T could be the top player out of that group. So be interesting to see where Texas A&M falls this season, how well they perform. Does he burn Najee? If he does compete, all those will be pretty interesting questions. So top SEC team at 7. Number 6, this is Donnie's friend, Donnie who's Purdue, his friend Jacob, who's Utah, and he comes in at number 6. Jacob, I don't think he's played in this format before, but what Donnie had mentioned yesterday on stream was that Utah and him tend to have a lot of the same teams, or same players on teams, and like a lot of the same guys. So it'll be a very interesting week 3 matchup when they play each other. That is something that we were highlighting a bit yesterday that I feel bad we don't really get to talk about in a very candid conversation, where you'll find in this format you're going to be playing teams that have the same players, and how you approach those games will be very interesting and kind of emblematic of some of the margins that you can make up, where you might schedule more high upside guys and playing the same players, or neutralizing or zeroing out certain players in a given week because you guys have the same players. So that'll be interesting. Something I wanted to highlight about this format is very particular towards Utah and Purdue's week 3 matchup, which I think will be very high profile game. Utah is projected to get north of 1,650 points, so that's pretty good. I think he's actually one of the top Pac-12 teams. Team-wise, he's got Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, running backs, Myles Gaskins, David Montgomery, Miles Sanders as his 3 primaries, with Boston Scott being a filler if necessary. I don't think he's got no real running backs on his taxi to fall back on, so that's pretty much his team. For running backs, he's got wide receivers Marquise Brown, DJ Chark, Chase Claypool, Russell Gage, KJ Hamler, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, Mark Andrews. So he's got a lot wide receivers to fall on, and some pretty good ones with Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, T.J. Chark. None of those top tier guys, but they're those wide receiver twos. He's got a few of them that he can capitalize. Scheduling, we did mention Purdue. Week 3 will be important. Week 2 against Toledo will be a good game to have, probably at the at-large position. Doesn't play really a tough opponent to maybe Week 11, where he finishes up against UCLA and also Colorado State in Week 13. Those 2 games will be very important for how that division works out. So I don't think he's got any buys. Week 7 against Colorado might be a bit tough, but yeah, he should be a team that competes. We'll see how he goes. He's one of the, I think he's the highest, no, not the highest ranked Pac-12 team. So that's Jacob at 6 with Utah. Number 5 is Oklahoma, which actually says 6 Oklahoma. Well, it's a mistake. Number 5 is Oklahoma. Oklahoma, coached by Scott, is the highest ranked Big 12 team. Scott has been in the format before, so he's put together a pretty good squad to compete this year. He's got Kyler Murray, Myles Gaskins, Darrell Henderson, Josh Jacobs, Zach Moss. Wide receivers, Ayuk, first A.J. Brown we've seen up in this format so far. Marcus Callaway, Russell Gage, Jerry Jeudy, Deontay Johnson. So 5, 6 solid wide receivers to fall on, and 4 really decent running backs. Quarterback, I know you'd like to have Drew Lock, but as I've mentioned, Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos for the entire season, so he's not going to get anything out of him. He did have Dobbins, which would have probably made this team even better, and probably why a lot of people put him in the top 10. But we'll see. I think he's got enough to kind of hold water, especially with Gaskins kind of being more the focal point of that Miami backfield. Schedule-wise, does have quite a few tough games. Plays Buffalo, plays Virginia Tech, Michigan, Iowa State, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Houston. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tough games this season. And I think he'll be tested, and he will be probably a team, if he can come out of those games with wins, with a really healthy at-large opportunity, if not winning the division and conference. So that's Oklahoma at 5. Number 4 is our very own Donnie, who's out of the Big Ten, highest-ranked Big Ten team, and I think the second Big Ten West team to be on this top 25. So we got to pick the brain of Donnie yesterday quite a bit. I think a lot of people feel he put together a really good team. Had 19 of the top 24 votes in the top 25. Supposed to score north of 1,600 points. Scheduling, I think we talked a little bit. He's really put an emphasis on Utah as being his primary non-conference tough opponent. He's got a few other conference games where he's got some tough goes with Michigan, Indiana, Notre Dame, Iowa, all in that 5-week period that'll be kind of testing the mettle of his team. In terms of his roster, he's got Josh Allen, Sam Darnold. He'll be fine at quarterback for the season. Chubb, Gaskins, Jacobs, James Robinson. That's 4 pretty stellar options to have that he could play, 3 of them any given week with pretty high level of certainty to produce some points. Wide receivers, got Chark, Claypool, Gallup, Jerry Jeudy. He's got Darius Slayton as another option. Mark Andrews, T.J. Hawkinson as 2 tight ends that'll probably provide as wide receiver 4 numbers. So very well-rounded team. Wide receivers, maybe none of those high ceiling type Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb type players, but I think all of those guys are going to be really quality goes where he's putting in enough points, and with those 4 running backs and Josh Allen will be a pretty well-rounded team to be competing certainly for the conference in the Big Ten, maybe one of our playoff teams for sure. So congrats to Donnie. He does have Kyle Pitts. I don't suspect he'll need him at all this season. He's got plenty of wide receiver depth to play on and can save that season of Pitts for later. So, yep, that's Donnie at number 4 with Purdue. Number 3 is Jesse of Stanford. Stanford is been in this format before. He plays in NFLU with a few of us. Got a ton of votes. 22 out of 24 in the top 25, 18 out of 24 in the top 10, 12 of the 24 in the top 5, and even got 2 first place votes. So a lot of people think Stanford's going to be competing at the end of the season. He's just shy of 1,700 points. Expected to be the top Pac-12 North team. Plays a tough sled of schedule with LSU, Baylor, UCLA, Oregon as his primary opponents that he's got to focus on. Team-wise, I do wonder if he doesn't have a high-ceiling quarterback, if that'll hamper his chances at the conference and maybe national championship. Running backs, he's got Chubb, Saquon, Darrell Henderson, David Montgomery, so 4 pretty solid running backs to have, and 2 of them are pretty high-ceiling ones, with David Montgomery being that fringe running back 1, 2. Wide receivers, he's got Gage, he's got Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf, Debo as his guys. He's got players like Hunter Renfrow, Mecole Hardman that could be sneaky little starts here and there throughout the season that might win him a game or 2 if he's playing tough opponents. So Jesse's got a pretty well-rounded team. Looks like next season he'll have Justin Fields available for him. So he might be set up for the future because he's going to lose Baker next season too. So that's Stanford. Number 3 brings us up to number 2, which is another Pac-12 team. So that's 3 Pac-12 teams within the top 10. So Pac-12 is looked at as like a high ceiling, very low floor type of conference, it looks like, based on understanding those dynamics of things. So this is LD, Larry. Number 2. It's got quite a few votes in the top 25 with 20 of them. Has a bunch in the top 10, more in the top 5 than Stanford, even. Just short of 1,700 points projected. Is expected to be the top Pac-12 South team. Team-wise, I think he probably would look a lot better if he did have J.K. Dobbins for sure. But he is expected to have Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. This is probably the most overkill quarterback room here. And don't know if he's going to necessarily get the margins of having both of those top flight quarterbacks throughout the season. You're only going to play one of them. Guess you can pick the hot hand, but if they're both scoring high points, you're not really making up the difference elsewhere. He's got, for running backs, Nick Chubb, Naeem Hines, James Robinson. Looks like he's going to start Javonte from the get-go. Wide receivers got DJ Chark, Mecole, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley. So he's probably got 3-4 options at wide receiver that are going to carry him. So we'll see how much people voted him in because of his quarterbacks. I think he's still got a pretty decent team. His depth at wide receiver will be tested. How high his running backs can carry him will definitely be tested, with just pretty much Chubb and Robinson being the primary drivers of that backfield group. Schedule-wise, he plays a pretty tough group, especially in the division. He's got some out-of-conference games where he's playing NC State as really the only tough opponent. Plays Oregon, plays UCLA and Utah to end the season, so everything could really hinge on those week 12 and 13 for Larry. And I think week 13 he's missing Chubb. So we'll see what that means for that team. So that's number 2. And then number 1 is, I think a lot of people definitely felt was the top team, is out of the ACC Coastal, and that is Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, coached by Daniel. I think Daniel actually goes to Virginia Tech, if I'm not wrong. So plays his alma mater or current school, and got a lot of votes in the top 25. 19 of the 24 in the top 25 got 11 first place votes. So people that felt he deserved to be in the top 25 had him at 1. Only team north of 1,700 points for the projections. Expect to have an unblemished record given given the points he's expected to score. Has a very tough week 1 schedule with Auburn on the docket. Then he comes back and plays Nevada week 2, then Oklahoma week 3, but then doesn't play really tough opponents until week 10, 11 with UConn and Duke. So if he gets through these first 3 games, and he could really have a shot at an undefeated season if he can get past week 10 and 11. Team-wise, he's got Darnold, Justin Herbert. Running backs, he's got Barkley, Chubb, Nyheim Hines, Josh Jacobs. So that's 4 pretty solid groups with some three really high upside ones. Wide receivers, he's got CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson. That's 4 to 5 really good options to have, and they're all pretty top end. So I think this team definitely warrants being up there. We'll see how well he can stay healthy, if he can beat some of these tough opponents the first couple weeks, but definitely Daniel deserves to be there, and probably one of the more convincing number 1s we could possibly have. So congrats to him for being number 1. And just to kind of summarize everything up, this is our top 25. We went through all these teams. They're all pretty deserving. I think there are a few cases for teams that might make up that ground. I think teams like Kentucky definitely warrant some consideration out of the SEC East. That's Devin's team. He's got quarterbacks like Baker, Tua, Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, Sony Michel, DJ Chark, Gallup, Jerry Jeudy, Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore as his wide receiver group. So definitely maybe a team that probably is just as deserving group in those lower, just outside the top 25. Other teams that definitely warranted, and we've mentioned a few times, was Iowa, Jacob Cole's team out of Big Ten. Definitely of interest. They got quite a few teams. Lamar's his quarterback. Chubb, Damian Harris. Looks like he's going to play Trey Sermon. Wide receiver is going to play Jamar Chase. Marquise Brown, Cortland Sutton, Pitts. All those guys look like they'll play for him. So pretty solid guy. We'll see if those freshmen can help him out. But yeah, and then even we'll give him some love because he helped put those projections together. But Matt out of Oregon's another team to look out for. Got Burrow, Daniel Jones. Running backs got Damian Harris, Josh Jacobs, Zach Moss, DeAndre Swift. Wide receivers, A.J. Moore, Marquise Brown, Michael Gallup, T. Higgins. Also has Dalton Schultz, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Reagor. So pretty solid group that could definitely make some noise in the Pac-12 if given the opportunity. So those are just a few teams to look out for. Just to kind of keep this a little tidy. We're almost under an hour, so let's finish this up strong. With that all said, we have our Week 1 college game day. It is Auburn versus Virginia Tech. They are two teams that are ranked on average for their matchup is the highest, so they will be college game day Week 1. So congrats to those two as they play. The other thing is we did the Devy draft order yesterday. All the results were posted on the Slack, and then we also have the message boards that have all of them listed on there, as well as the requirements. Just some things to note. It was randomized. Donnie and Lewis and them can attribute to the randomization, although settings are the same, which you can see on the replay. It's just for this year that we're doing the randomizer. Next year it will be the reverse conference standings, with the reverse national rankings as being the tiebreaker for the conference standings. So one copy of a player or one player is eligible to be picked by a team. So one copy of Sam Howell or a Keaton Slovis can be picked by a team. Both copies aren't available, and that's just to kind of give more of an opportunity for a team to maximize that rebate system, which I'll emphasize. It says a rebate system, so the people that you pick in the draft are not on your team for sure. You still have to win them in the subsequent auction next year, but you're given this kind of discount. The only team to have the ability to discount, kind of like It's kind of like a finder's fee. I found them first. I annotated I like them first. I get up to a $20 discount on their price for next season when they are there. Other thing to note is if they don't become draft eligible, they are recycled back into the pool to be selected the next season. So don't pick freshmen because they won't be making it to the pool, and you'll just be kind of wasting a spot. So just some things to highlight, but that is it for everything. I hope everyone has fun. Make sure you set your lineups for this first week. Make sure you get everyone on taxi or IR that you want for red shirts. And let's have some fun. So hope everyone enjoys this. I will get this posted as soon as I can. But thank you everyone for your patience, and I hope you have a good one.